disastrous, wouldn't it? Okay, welcome everybody to Talking Niagara this morning. It is December the 11th, 2025, 14 days till Christmas. And that would make it 14 plus 7 days till the new year. Well, there we go. Okay, so my thinking about the week after next is that we'll end on the 20th. Do you want to do the 22nd and 23rd? Shows on the 22nd and 23rd, and then we take the time off to the new year?
Yeah, I think that's probably all right.
Yeah, I think we'll do that. Because I'm going to work on the 22nd and 23rd. Don't know how many other people are, but I am. All right. Okay, so that said, so we'll be going up to the 23rd and having a great Christmas after that. Okay, so a blind man in St. Catharines was awarded $28,000 because of discriminatory hiring practices, and he ended up with an 8-year tribunal wait. So sometimes you've got to wait for these things. Doesn't tell us who actually did his case. There aren't many people in this area that do, and Angela Brown does this sort of thing, but it wasn't our firm that did it. So there we go. All right.
Well, he filed a blind guy who was fully qualified for a job.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
He's shortlisted for the job, and then he's just told he can't have it. And basically, it was because he was blind. I guess that's the only reason, and they would have to have accommodated some of his needs if they did hire them. So they just decided not to.
They would have to have what's called a refreshable braille display that he could utilize so that he can read what's on the screen and read the next prompt, etc., etc. So if he's dealing with a customer, he can understand what is the interactive bit about what's going on. So if a customer fills in something on the screen, he can see it through the braille device. Except the way I read this is the company who were considering hiring him couldn't be bothered to put this braille device into their IT system because they couldn't figure out how to do it. I'm being blunt, but I don't see any other way to put it, really.
Yeah, I think it was just we'll save ourselves some expense here and just not hire the guy, and we'll hire somebody else.
Yeah, and this guy's got 2 diplomas in computer hardware and computer programming and analysis. It seems as if it's a diploma, not a degree, but it seems as if he's got the right approach, right attitude, etc. I'd certainly be considering hiring the guy very seriously.
Well, it took 7 years for this to conclude, and the monetary outlay is minimal. Basically, it's $28,000.
Yeah, but he did find himself a new job in 2000.
Yeah, that's 2 years later. There's 2 years where he could have been employed, and so the company, however, that turned him down was sold. So now it's the responsibility of those who now own it to conclude this case. But what I see here is a very small payout. It's more symbolic than anything. Yeah, $20,000 is a bump in the road for any.
Well, basically, it's $20,000 for injury of dignity, feelings, and self-respect. And then $8,000 of lost wages, which is nothing actually when you consider that that's probably not even 3 months worth of salary. I don't, obviously the article doesn't say how much he was going to get paid, what the job was worth, right?
Well, there's lots of here that's missing because the company changed hands.
Yeah.
And that position may have been eliminated shortly after he applied for it, and that's why it was only $8,000.
That is a possibility. That always is a possibility. Whenever a new corporation takes over an old corporation, they tend to look at the things and go, okay, I've got 2 people doing X, then one of them must go.
Yes, so or we don't need to do X anymore. So
that's another possibility. Yeah.
and we don't like the guy that's doing X, so we'll get rid of the job for a couple months and then bring it back after we dump the guy. You know, there's all kinds of different ways.
Oh yeah,
they can do.
Those are all things that have been done over the years. You know that, I know that, and every working stiff knows that, right?
Yeah. So this guy, anyway, it's an interesting legal thing that he applied for a job that they would have had to accommodate him with Braille, a Braille system.
I've seen those Braille systems.
Well, go ahead.
I've seen those Braille systems. I find them pretty intriguing to look at. My blind colleagues that I've had, you know, are fascinated by them, as am I. But you know, but it's a lifeline for them.
Well, this was basically a call center thing, wasn't it?
Yeah, yeah. But he's basically saying he's never been successful at getting call center jobs. It doesn't tell us what job he was getting, whether he was an IT tech on the call center or what.
Well, anyway, he says according to the decision, an IT operations employee at Convergys claimed to have tested trial versions and free screen readers software that read on-screen information by speech or through refreshable Braille display. The employee concluded none adequately worked nor was interactive with their customer relationship management software. So I don't know. I suppose the guy was on the phone because one thing blind people can do, or disabled people can do, is be telephone support.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Be at call centers. That's something that
we don't see the person who's doing telephone support in almost any position can have a headset on their head, and you don't see them, but they can hear everything you say. And what you wouldn't know is they can probably hear everything that's on the screen if they're blind, right?
Yeah, it could be Ronald McDonald from the McDonald's closed down in the corner. You know, I mean,
yeah.
Could be anybody, but the problem here is, in this particular case, they couldn't adequately help him out with the stuff that he needed, and I think that's pretty much the decision they came to, was they're not going to accommodate him because it probably would have cost them some money. They weren't willing to take the risk, it seems to me, of them bringing on a blind person and finding they could not accommodate him and could not decide whether or not he was good enough at his job to overcome that.
Yeah,
I'm not so sure. I think it was just they didn't want to take a chance. I could see big companies taking a chance on a new employee, a blind person that has Braille that they require because they've got a lot of cushion. But if you get into a smaller company and you need someone that you would probably be dissuaded from making the investments in Braille and rereadable Braille, things like that, particularly when you're not sure if it's going to work or not sure that it would be, it is a workable situation.
And that is, of course, the big danger whenever you're dealing with people who are disabled in any way, that you don't take them on because you believe they can't adequately do the job or they can't be accommodated. Then, you know, and basically one of the things about human rights thing is accommodation has to be up to the point of, you know, essentially almost the point of ruin, if you know what I mean. So you're expected to accommodate, and you're expected to, you could sometimes be expected to pay handsomely for that accommodation.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So like I say, a big outfit or a government outfit.
Yeah.
A government outfit can, there's room and stuff like that. But if you got a smaller outfit, I mean, you're taking a chance, and you probably have, you don't want disruption in your service. But I'm just guessing. I'm just guessing all along here. Obviously, the human rights thing was pronounced in favor of the blind gentleman, and he got $28,000, which is not that huge of a thing, a payout. So it's mostly symbolic more than anything else. Although $28,000 is a nice piece of change for the average guy, but it's probably not going to hurt a company very much.
No. Well, the other thing,
if the same situation came up, they might just eat another $28,000 rather than try to accommodate a blind person for a job.
That's likely to be true. According to its 2022 Statistics Canada report, it found that 6.9% of Canada's working age population with disabilities are unemployed, which at the time was almost double the unemployment rate for those without disabilities.
Yeah.
Right. At the time, obviously 2022 and 2025 statistics on unemployment are way different, right? We accept that, right?
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. Right. So that's something important to know, is that people with disabilities find it much harder to get a job. And the other thing I'm always concerned about is, how many times do you see this is a job that's in an office, you're in your desk, you're never going to move from your desk except for going and getting a glass of water from the kitchen, and they want a driving license. You never work elsewhere, you never go anywhere else, but you need a driving license to get that job. That's a bit wrong.
Well, there you go. Well, yeah, these are all kinds of situations, gaps in our abilities, but you have to understand that as far as the company goes, they don't want to put out any money on uncertainty.
Yeah.
But so, again, like I say, like a big company could take that. But if you're talking about they have to get a driver's license, well, of course, then they'll have to have their car geared up. And the blind guy with a driver's license is just a bad idea.
Yeah. And in fact, actually, the whole point is that this whole driving license stuff is a lot of nonsense in many cases. Obviously, if you've got a job as a traveling salesman, having a driving license is a key position. If you're a truck driver, having a driving license is a key position. Working on a desk in an office and the same location in downtown Niagara Falls or downtown St. Catharines, a driving license is not required.
No, it's not. And but if that's a requirement, I don't know. I don't know why that would be a requirement for that job. I know a person that does in a call center, works from home, and has no driver's license.
Quite. And in fact, even if he worked at the place, he'd probably leave on time, get the right bus, and be there, and 99.99% of the time be there on time. And hey, the car driver would be there on time 99.99% of the time as well.
Yeah. Well, that's just it. Like
we'll get clobbered on snow days. We'll get clobbered on snow days, right? Well,
anyway.
Yeah.
Getting back to this guy, the blind guy, he did get a judgment in his favor. It was rather small, which more symbolic than anything else.
Yeah.
And I don't think that would dissuade any company from doing the same thing again, if they were worried about, that you can go and say to any company, look, I'm a blind guy, can do this job as well as anyone else. The only thing is you have to come up with some special equipment for me. Yeah. And you have to supply my needs that way. They're not going to probably they're not going to begrudge you the special equipment really as much as they are worried that you won't be able to do the job continuously.
Well, okay, so one of the comments here: 8-year tribunal wait is a display of incompetency and not caring at all. It's actually one of the biggest problems we have with the Human Rights Tribunal of Ontario. It's we talked, the backlog and delays at the Landlord and Tenant Board have been very public and very looked at very viciously, but yet the HRTO is even more backlogged, doesn't have as many cases. Now, in fact, the Landlord and Tenant Board is actually catching up. They don't have the amount of backlog they were having before. Good morning, Betty.
I'm in complete agreement with that commentator. Yeah, it's a disgrace that they have to wait 7-8 years for a decision on that, the Human Rights Tribunal, and that's what keeps these things going. If they had addressed it quickly, they may have urged this particular company to be a little bit more careful when it comes to hiring practices.
One of the problems,
but nothing's going to change now. When anybody gets charged with a human rights, thinks they're going to get charged with a human rights thing, they can happily think, well, we won't have to worry about this for 5-8 years from now.
Yeah,
and then based on what we see, punishments will be very minor.
Yeah, and 28K over 8-year, 28K. They may have offered 5K, 8 years ago. Right.
Which makes this.
If they'd have put that 5K in the bank, it would have been worth 28K by now.
Yeah. So basically, what the commentator has said is correct. It's a disgrace, basically a real disgrace
and the 28,000 is likely less than the accommodation would cost. Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
What else do we got?
Yeah, no, so I'm just finishing these comments. Good morning from Nancy from Cleveland. Freezing in Cleveland again. Yeah, freezing here as well. Stay bundled up warm, and if it's snowing out there, clear your car before you go, okay? All right. Human Rights Tribunal, is there any such thing? Is there such a thing like that in Canada? Injured workers lose their rights from getting injured. That's injured workers is a different thing. Human Rights Tribunal of Ontario is actually different than injured workers, Mike. But yeah, I don't disagree with your comment. Moving on, okay. The vexatious complaint against Councillor Mike Strange is dismissed. Basically, what is saying is the Integrity Commissioner basically said it was vexatious. The complaint was turning the process into a glorified photo opportunity and a public spectacle. And so they clamped down on it and said, no, we're not doing this.
Yeah, basically they took one look at it. There was a rather lengthy report. If you go to the agenda, the City Hall agenda, you'll see a rather lengthy report by the commissioner. And basically it just unloads on Jody Burdett. Of course, Jody Burdett was complaining about Mike Strange commenting on his own legal case in council, which he shouldn't have done, but and also bringing in his friends to sort of drown out those people who are protesting. Someone who is under an assault charge, participating in civil government. Those demonstrations, the commissioners basically said, you can think what you want of those things, but those are typical political things that the mayor himself, who made the rule that you can't bring that up, you shouldn't be bringing that up, and Mike Strange did bring it up. Yeah. And the mayor has the control over the situation, and other councillors did. As a matter of fact, they pointed out Lori Lococo brought up a point of order during that. So he says that the council and the mayor and the council together have enough rules to control such a thing and bring it back into a line. As far as bringing a bunch of guys from the hose brigade to rah him, that is typical political fare as well, to bring in.
It's that
bring in
happens
supporters.
every who hasn't been to City Hall to kind of support their preferred candidate? Many
Yes,
people
well,
have. Many people
yeah,
have.
yeah, you can do that for a number of reasons. What Jody Burdett disliked about the whole thing is you can't deny that it was perhaps not the best approach that Mike Strange could have taken, bringing his buddies in, particular with an assault case, and then telling them the drinks would be on him afterwards. Yeah. That kind of thing. It's kind of a it's not in good taste. It's not professional. It is not what you would call the actions of a real politician, or should be politician, with the same kind of ethics. However, these things happen, and it is outside the purview of the commissioner.
Yeah,
that is within the purview of the council itself. And that was his argument, basically. Yeah, it might be distasteful for anyone that wants to think about it, but it's outside of what the commissioner is up against, because he sees no particular wrong in this particular case that he has judgment over.
Yeah. All right. Moving on. Niagara Falls water bills are going up $3.50, going up to $3.50 per cubic meter. That's going up from $3.44 per cubic meter. And the fixed rates will be 712.44, which is up 54.96 this year.
Yeah, I'm glad. Chief Administrative Officer says that the water is heavily regulated system, and he says most of the water infrastructure in Niagara is built in the 60s, 70s. There wasn't adequate investment in the system over the years. This is something that we've pointed out on this show over and over again. I pointed it out also on Paul's show on Monday. This is a kick the can down the road. This is what happens when you do that. There's been a lot of complaints about the sudden amount of vehicle expenses that the city of Niagara Falls has had, and that's because the vehicles were let to go to junk, and now they have to replace them. They didn't invest in them periodically. They just kept kicking that can down the road, telling the taxpayer, well, your taxes aren't going up. Well, one of the reasons why they weren't going up is because you were deferring the cost to years down the road. And he even uses my own words here. He must have been listening to me. We kicked the can down the road. I do agree that it's going to go up. That's the amount of money. We have 30 years to make up for, and we've got to make up for it. We're trying to do it in a gradual manner and in a responsible manner. And Burgess said that he hopes that the new pumping technology that comes online may reduce the cost, but we're looking at significantly more than inflationary costs over the next period of time just to keep the system going. Yeah, that is a failure. And this is a good part. This is a failure, I think, of not planning, and that's why the province, frankly, has put in asset management. Now, this part is very important. I didn't think of this when they talked about asset management previously. And he says that's a failure. And I think that the planning and why the province, frankly, has put in asset management planning, because this should have been dealt with over time, and we wouldn't be catching up as much as we are today with the rates. Yeah, it was just being bad planning by different municipal governments who want to keep taxes as low as they can, and so they kick the can down the road. There's all kinds of engineers. There's all kinds of people telling them, look, you can't do that. You can't really kick the can down the road because sooner or later you're going to have catastrophic failures, or your system will not be able to provide
But
clean
again,
water or sewage disposal for your citizens.
But again, the asset management planning for municipal infrastructure regulation has been around since 2017. So they're clearly not applying it.
Well, 2017, I don't know how that can. That's only 7 years, and it's really just got a real boost in our own particular government, because they're the ones that have now looked at the asset management more seriously recently. But the fact of the matter is that no amount of asset management in 2017 going forward could have corrected the massive amounts of problems we have with our water and wastewater.
And one of the big problems here is Ontario's population is projected, right, to grow 40% between 2023 and 2051. So, in fact, actually, it's incumbent largely upon the province to bring that money to the municipalities, because the municipalities have got no other way of raising it.
Well, I don't know. The whole essence of the article is, though, that this was a big mistake. It is what politicians will typically do, is kick the can down the road. And this happens in private industry too. I can tell you that in private industry, I've been there, and I've known where the people on the floor have warned about a certain equipment or a certain system that's going to fail, and they just keep putting Band-Aids on it, and suddenly they have a catastrophic failure. They had an enormous catastrophic failure at the Esso plant down in Niagara, down in Nanticoke, and they had been warned about that for years, that the system was going to fail. And when it did fail, it failed in an enormous way. It cost the company any more money than it did would have thought of maintaining it in the first place.
Yeah, I've seen one whereby there was reports went to this company year after year after year that you cannot run the production line. It was a manufacturing company. You can't run the production line on 75-year-old machinery and expect it not to ever break. And they should be putting in new machinery, secondary production lines, and because if this does break at any time, it's going to cost them, and the figure was in excess of 10 million quid.
Well, what happens is they get a new CEO, and let's say they get a new CEO in a steel company, and his job is to bring in more dividends for his shareholders. Basically, that's the demand of the board. More, give me more. And the people on the other side, look, take less so that we can fix a few things. No, we want more. Yeah. And then finally the thing breaks, and then all of a sudden the dividends just disappear. They got to make more money. And then the CEO, who was making mass money, making all this extra profit, now has to leave. But he doesn't leave with anything less than he came in with. In fact, he leaves with more. So that's probably the problem basically in private industry. But this is government. But basically the motivation of the politicians is to keep your tax rate down, because they want to get elected again. And this asset management, this focus on asset management, is a very good thing. This will avoid that from happening. You cannot ignore a problem like we do now. It's actually insane that nobody had the foresight to understand that we're going to have water and wastewater problems down the road. And and I know there were engineers and people who working in the field saying over and over and over again, look, you got to do something about this, but the politicians turned a blind eye to it.
And that's part of the problem, is that whilst I'm very keen that we actually make sure that we don't overspend our municipal assets, I'm also very conscious that whatever we do in this area requires continual and ongoing maintenance.
Well, asset management.
Yeah,
Take
exactly.
care of your roads. Don't let your roads get bad. Don't let your bridges get so bad that you have to shut down traffic for 3 months to fix it.
Yeah.
Keep up on it.
Yeah.
Plan
And
ahead.
part of that is actually when Joe Blow, Mr. Public, reports in that, hey, at Davis Road and at the corner of Davis and Dunn, there's a new pothole. Send an engineer down. Don't just ignore it. Send an engineer down to actually do a measurement of it and understand what the problem here is. Maybe filling it up with gravel might work as a temporary thing. The fact that there's a pothole at a particular corner is actually just, it is fuel for the future that you must actually repair it. Because what will happen if you don't is that you're going to end up with that pothole occurring again and again and again. And over a 10-year period, that pothole is probably responsible for maybe $1 million worth of damage to a bus or something.
Yeah, band-aiding it, band-aiding it until you can't band-aid it anymore.
Exactly. Yeah.
So anyway,
and that was an entirely fictional street, by the way.
I think probably the asset management focus will reduce a lot of this, and hopefully we won't get to the point where we've kicked the can down the road for so long that we need massive amounts of investments to return it. And that's what they're saying here, basically, about the water system and your taxes. You're not going to be able to avoid this because this is water. You need water. Yeah. And there hasn't been significant investment in here for over 30 years.
Yeah.
And now we have to do it now. And that is the result of kicking things down the road. But the asset management, that's the other part of the article that's important, is that the new focus on asset management will reduce this kind of outcome.
And I'm going to ask you this, Dave. When you like me listen to the city council meetings all the time, when have you ever heard them talk about risk management?
No, but it is. Yeah, I have. As a matter of fact, it's come up in the agenda, I think, several months ago. There was a lot of talk about risk management. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. But it's rare.
Yeah, I suppose so. But it would have to be relevant.
It should be on the budget. Risk management as a factor should be on the budget.
Well, risk management would be part of asset management as well.
Yeah. Oh,
so the risk management, that is a very common thing now. It is part and parcel of any kind of planning going forward or proposals. Risk management is always included. And you'll find that being used in city council. As a matter of fact, we talked about it at length one time, I think on Paul's show, but I'm not sure.
One of the big problems, of course, is that, and we're not a large municipality, we are, generally speaking, a smaller municipality. And often the problems we have is lack of resources in our municipalities to keep those fixes going year after year.
Lack of resources.
Well, what'll happen is we lose a maintenance guy from the city crew, and we don't replace him for 6 months.
Well, yeah.
And the guy, and therefore the stuff that guy would have done is never done. It is 6 months delayed by 6 months.
Yeah. So, and do you have a real? I don't know. It. So things like that happen.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Right. Let's move on because the other one's kind of interestingly related. Because we're always talking about inflation and keeping things to the level of inflation. And I think that water bill is not too bad an increase. But Bank of Canada is basically holding its interest rate at 2.25%, which may or may not be good news.
Well, they're holding the interest rate. Let's put it into perspective. We're still lower than the United States.
Yeah.
And the United States is likely going to lower their interest rates again. They're really in a trap situation because of the uncertainty there. And
Well,
of course, their interest rates will affect us as well somehow.
yeah.
And so I think that what the Bank of Canada does is they really haven't get any choice but to hold the line here. They dropped the interest rates earlier, and even thinking of it prior to the tariff thing, because of the lack of productivity and investment in Canadian in Canada, basically.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they weren't just looking at the person that's buying a house or anything like that. They were seeing that there was a lack of investment, and they tried to stimulate investment in Canada by keeping the interest rates low.
Yeah.
Now, interest rates are based on inflation and employment. So when inflation goes up, they have to cool it down, or things will just go crazy, and we'll end up paying $100 for an apple. Our currency will go on. Look what happened to Turkey when they ignored the inflation, the real inflation rates. Their inflation went up 50, 60, 70%, many times.
Well, we've had
the Turkish currency just completely devalued extraordinarily.
Yeah, and we've had many times in the last couple of years, we've had inflation, individual items that have gone up 100, 200%, right? So individual items, like, I'm not saying this happened with bread, but it's where bread went up from $2 to $8, let's say, per loaf, and that type of thing. And I'm not saying that actually happened, but there are various examples of it. Like meat was a big problem, meat prices went through the roof at one point.
Well, they still are.
And
they still are too high.
Yeah, way too high.
But I talked to the cattle farmers in the Royal Winter Fair there, and they're pretty happy. They're making money hand over fist. There's a huge demand, and there is even a demand for their beef in the United States, even with the tariffs. Mm-hmm. But they have no trouble selling anything. Now, the problem that might keep that situation going is the older farmers, which most of them are older, see that the beef prices are at historic highs. So they're selling off all their stock, and they don't have any more breeding stock because they don't plan to breed anymore. It's time for them to retire. So they're selling off their complete breeding stock so that they can make a nice cushion of money for retirement. And that's one of the things that we'll see that will maintain a high price of beef, is because the breeding stock is being reduced. But in the meantime, the farmers are happy for once in their life. And I was pretty congratulatory to them. They were happy. And telling you, the beef cattle in Ontario makes is just fabulous. It's just variety, dairy cattle as well. It's really, really a source of pride anytime you go there and see what they can do. Anyway, but our interest rates are maintaining themselves, and it is prudent that they maintain themselves at this particular time. We see a lot of pressure in the United States to drop the rate again. That will probably happen, but it is an uncertain thing there because the labor market is very uncertain, and the inflation still remains too high, basically. And the consumption in the United States, 1/2 of it is with the top 10% people. So that's a disturbing trend. Your interest rates dropping an interest rate may artificially help you for a short period of time, but in the long run, it will make things more expensive and it will negate itself. So that, I think, is the same considerations the Bank of Canada is using. It'll be a while before they have to judge what's going to happen. Everything is a waiting game with the tariffs and what's going to happen with the tariffs and what's going to happen to the economy with that. So I don't really expect the Canadian Bank of Canada to drop rates anytime soon unless they see a real opportunity for people to invest in Canada in a big way. Then they might take that plunge.
And basically, Tiff Macklin who's the Bank of England, Bank of Canada governor, has basically said the unpredictability of the U.S. trade policies and renegotiation of CUSMA is actually creating too much uncertainty about how the economy will adjust to higher tariffs, etc. And that's a large amount about why they've kept the stability on that bank rate.
Yeah, it's just what I said. Yeah, it's there is a level of uncertainty that would, even if they thought it might be a good idea to reduce interest rates another 0.25% or whatever, they're not going to do it until they figure out what's going to happen.
No, the confusion. They have to have, and the bank has to have an answer to that before that they can actually move our interest rates again, I think.
Yes.
And that's not going to happen probably till the spring.
Well, yeah. Well, that'll help us segue into the next article, which is about that. It is about the renegotiation of CUSMA. Isn't it? The next one.
Yeah. Yeah, that is. Yeah. Okay. So, and Trump's point man on trade floats separate deals with Canada and Mexico at the moment.
Yeah, right? You're at a situation here where the United States is being quite confused. They've come up and tried to deal a hammer blow across the economy, reshape it so that they would be the big winner everywhere. They looked for zero-sum deals, not zero-sum deals, meaning what's the best for us, who cares about you kind of thing. Whereas normally when you go into negotiations, you go, well, what's good for you? What's good for us? What's good for you is not good for us. Can we fix that a bit? In this particular, you might be able to talk about dairy or steel or nickel or So, and you could say, oh, well, I think you're subsidizing your lumber industry or whatever. You could sort these things out in the trade deals. But what the U.S. wants to do now is what this point man is talking about is doing a separate deal with Canada and doing a separate deal with Mexico. What it is really meant to do is to centralize production in the United States, so each one is hugely dependent on the United States, and the United States takes over just about everything within their borders, and then we're just kind of forced to
become a client. The way I read about this is that potential is that Canada becomes a client state of the US. We're going to manufacture all the cars in US, but hey, Canada, if you want to buy a car, we've got plenty to sell you, type thing.
Well, they're trying to say that, well, we have way different ideas with trade with Canada and Mexico, and our trade is much different. These things should be separate. What it does do is it separates Mexico from Canada in this free trade zone. The biggest complaints, of course, with Mexico, that it is bringing in Chinese goods disguised as Mexican and then floating them into the U.S. market. That's true. Canada has the porous borders and things of that kind. Fentanyl or whatever, even in small amounts, is issues. But the real course of action here is to separate everybody where you are the most controlling agent. They are already, so I don't understand why they don't view CUSMA as them being the most important player and them being the ones that get the most out of it, particularly with Canada when just about they have a trade surplus with us. If you take away oil, oil, everything else, they have a surplus.
Yeah, absolutely.
I can't understand their idea there, but it is a control thing. Basically, they want to be able to poach as many jobs and control the situation more than anything. They are very wrong about this, in my opinion, because the North American free trade thing makes the whole continent hugely powerful.
Yeah,
economically. if you kind of reduce it to where
Well,
only one of those players is the main controller, then you weaken that.
Yeah, and you see, we've talked several times about how the car industry takes parts from Canada, Mexico, and blends it all into making a single car. And it doesn't matter whether the ultimate car is made in Canada, US, or Mexico. It's a Model X whatever car, right? And the point being is that I think that applies to almost any manufactured product that you've got. Doesn't matter whether it's where it's made, right? So long as when the final components come together, you've got a better product because of it. And that's true for TVs, for cars, for whatever, and that's the whole purpose of the Kuzma deal.
Well, it was supposed to be a win-win, and Trump doesn't like the win-win idea. He likes the zero sum. So he doesn't want any cars built in Canada. He wants them all built in the U.S. And yet there is no consideration for the fact that we are the number one buyer of U.S. vehicles.
Yeah.
The Canada buys more U.S. vehicles than China, Germany, Japan, etc. combined.
And hey, every Canadian buyer, when they're going in to buy a new car, is going in with their kind of with whatever their notions are. I want brand X because that brand X is for me, right? So they go in and they buy their brand new car, and it's supporting, as we know, it's supporting American, Canadian, and Mexican jobs.
Now, this is very interesting, particular. Now, what we have a problem here is that Trump is surrounded by yes men who will do his bidding and give him the answers he wants.
Yeah.
I'm not so sure that him or his administration has been able to listen well enough. There has been 3 days of presentations and consultations by 150 businesses in the United States who came to Washington to urge Washington to continue the USMCA as they see it, or Kuzma as we see it. 150, how essential the Kuzma agreement is for them being strong and resilient producers.
This was the public hearings that happened in the last couple of weeks. And those 150 speakers representing every major economic sector. And I would be saying to Mr. Trump, hey, those business people who love Kuzma know a great deal more about it than you do, sir.
Well, that'll never work, because every time you say that we know more than you, he freaks out.
Yeah.
So what they did do, and I mentioned this the other day as well, they went and they kind of said, "Oh, you're wonderful. What a great deal maker. You did that Kuzma deal, that USMCA deal. What a great deal. It was super great. The greatest deal of all time. And we want you to continue with that deal." And then they gave him three days of reasoning why. But they started out with the big compliment and the bow down. It seems that anyone who does anything with the U.S. president has to sort of supplicate themselves in some way, prostrate themselves, saying what a wonderful, great dude you are before they begin. Even FIFA gave him a pretend Nobel Peace Prize.
Yeah. Okay, so Rick is basically saying that Trump is only dealing with Mexico, not Canada.
Look what's happened recently. He's had to drop the tariffs on all kinds of foodstuffs coming into the United States because of the affordability crisis. The affordability crisis that was supposed to be a hoax by the Democrats, but now all of a sudden it's not a hoax. It's actually something that the Democrats created. So now they're fighting it. So now they've reworded it enough that they actually address it. So Trump's administration has dropped the import tariffs on all kinds of foodstuffs. I have a feeling that that's going to happen too in certain industries. The car industry, the automotive industry, is not too happy with what he has planned. They don't have the capacity to make up that kind of those parts and everything else. Go ahead.
We had the thing back in June where we read basically, we talked about a news article back in June about Stellantis, GM, Ford, each losing about $300 million on $300 billion on these tariffs.
Yeah, so it was not really well considered. The problem is, and I feel this to be the big thing, is of the people that surround him. If he says he wants a certain thing, they're going to deliver, even if it's bad for the country.
Yeah.
Because everybody's got to kind of acknowledge his potency, like the great potentate, and bow down to his whims and stuff like that. That really bothers me a lot. Now, they've had 3 days of consultation where enormous amounts of companies have come and given their case over and over and over again, and how disastrous dismantling Kuzma would be for them. And so their answer to it is, well, maybe we'll do a baby Kuzma. We'll do a deal with Canada and a separate deal with Mexico. They don't get it. They don't understand trade, obviously. They don't understand the benefits of a free trade zone, Mexico, Canada, and the United States. That's what bothers me. Oh, yeah, well, we can have a free trade, but we'll have separate ones. That really just doesn't fit well. And you'll find these same people who have sent delegations to Washington for over the 3-day period wouldn't agree with that one bit. And then we found, of course, and I will repeat ourselves from the other day, where Costco and Toyota and Yamaha Tire and Target and all these other stores have demanded their tariffs back because it's been a real problem for them. They're tired of eating the cost of the tariff. So there's all kinds of economic pressure on the White House.
Yeah.
And seriously, once Trump's out, the free trade deal will come back in some way or other.
Yeah. All right. Okay. So the other thing about this is, of course, so U.S. businesses love Kuzma, but where are we going with all of this? I think the U.S. seems to be exceedingly uncertain. Every day it's a new direction, right?
Well, we see that the day of liberation or whatever, when Trump came up with all his big tariffs, including 10% on Hamilton Island, which is just got nobody lives there. It's just a bunch of penguins. Nevertheless, they came up with this big thing, and right away the stock market crashed. So he had to pull back. You see, also, I think what they're doing is they're playing chicken a lot of times. They don't really know what they're doing. They came out with 145% tariff on Chinese goods. The Chinese responded, and then Trump says, "Well, Xi's got to phone me. When Xi phones me, we'll sort this out." And Xi didn't phone him. Yeah, right. And Xi would never phone him. And he says, "Well, Xi's got to phone it, or these are going to stay in place." Well, the Chinese say, "We got a lot of cards to play. We're not talking to you." And then Besant had to run over to Switzerland. Besant had to run over to Switzerland and find somebody that would talk to him so he could say, "Oh, how can we fix this?" And they came to an agreement to cool down. So the trade thing, he got beat up by China pretty badly there. He got humiliated, and pretty much China says, "Well, we got the one thing you need, and that is the rare earth, the magnets, etc. And we ain't gonna give you any if you don't shut up." So Trump shut up, Yeah.
All right. Okay. So and at the end of the day, I think ultimately the business are going to get through to Trump, because if they don't like it,
well, Trump's got to find victory somehow. He's got to show that he's like. And I think this idea of coming to him with acknowledging his genius with the USMCA renegotiation of the trade deal, which he himself called the greatest trade deal of all time, some words of that effect. That's the approach to use. You got to go to his ego. And then once you stroke his ego, then you try to convince him how good of a deal it really was and how good of a deal it should be going forward. But the problem is too many of the people in and around him want a zero-sum game. And they're playing to whatever whims they think he has. And that's unfortunate.
And the zero-sum gain really isn't working.
Zero-sum game is never any good in trade.
Yeah. Exactly.
Eventually, even if you have short-term gains, you got long-term pain.
Yeah.
Because you stifled trade, basically. You reduce the ability of your trading partners to trade, which reduces their ability to buy your goods because they are, et cetera, And what you want to do is stimulate free-flowing trade. And as I said, his whole ideas are out of focus when he comes down on Brazil, when they have a huge trade surplus with Brazil, and then decides he's going to put a big tariffs on it, and then he has to turn around and take them off. Yeah, because coffee got too expensive or other things got too expensive, and he's got to start taking tariffs off, and then I don't know, and then he puts the BS type of tariffs on Canada for aluminum and steel, and then finds himself trying to blame Canada for the price of fertilizer, and saying that Canada is burning them on the price of fertilizer because the U.S. farmer needs fertilizer, and most of the potash comes from Canada. So he's trying to find a way of blaming Canada for the high price of farm production.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Moving on. What's this with Canada being, the 764 network being labeled as a terrorist group in Canada?
Have you ever heard of that before?
I've never heard of it before, to be quite honest. I'm reading this article and going, what? Never heard of them.
Yeah, right? 764 is now determined to be a terrorist organization in Canada. I've never heard of it, but it seems to be a nihilistic sort of society-destroying type of political political thing. The only thing I can.
Well, they're seeking to destroy society by violence and chaos.
So they're kind of an anarchistic
anarchy. Yeah,
they're kind of an anarchistic political force, and anarchism in the late 1800s and early 1900s played a huge effect in politics, in that they assassinated people. They felt that if they killed enough important people at the top, industrialists, politicians, and stuff, that this would cause a revolution, which would destroy the existing society so they could rebuild it from new.
Okay, so basically what they're talking about is in February 24, police in Lethbridge, Alberta, charged a 14-year-old boy with a series of offences, including making and distributing child pornography. Police allege he was a member of 764.
Yeah, and 764 is trying to get into the head of youth. And this is the problem here. Using video games or social media and stuff, they try to recruit youth. They try to get them to do violent things and sexual things. They actually had a 14-year-old.
It sounds like a criminal organization, not a terrorist one.
No, it's much more a terrorist organization, the way I read it, because there is no money in this. This is a concerted effort to pervert the minds of the young so that they will have an anarchistic type of ideology.
Yeah.
It's in a way, it's kind of like ISIS or Al-Qaeda, where it takes Islam and perverts it into believing that. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, now you mention ISIS and that. Islamic State Mozambique was also one of these mentioned there, right? So that's an ISIS spring-off, right?
Yeah, you would think was a given. I'm I'm wondering why it took them so long to do that. I mean, ISIS is ISIS, and they've been operating in brutal way in northern Mozambique already.
Yeah.
So that was kind of late to the game, I thought, but better late than never. But the fact of the matter is, these outfits. So there's a good idea there. There's ISIS, and what they believe in is to kind of completely destroy existing society and rebuild it along Islamic lines. Now the 764 or whatever this outfit is, 764. They have a different idea. They want to instill an anarchistic sort of ideology within the youths, and that means they want the youth to entertain violence and sexual misbehavior in order for the society to collapse.
And they're accusing 764, Manic Murder Cult, and Telegram Collective of basically using social media and online gaming platforms to recruit and radicalize individuals to spread propaganda and violent extremist narratives. These actually sound like way more dangerous groups than Islamic State Mozambique.
I don't think so, because Islamic State Mozambique has a more sort of historical ideology.
Sorry, I meant more dangerous with inside Canada.
Oh yeah,
right.
And here they even describe it as a kind of as a nihilist. The 764 as a nihilist. Is seeking to destroy civil, and basically, as I said, they're nihilistic or anarchistic, if you wish, seeking to destroy civilized society through violence and chaos, not as a step towards a new state, but rather as an end itself. So they do not have visions for what happens after society collapses.
So basically,
whereas sometimes the anarchists do. They feel that you begin now with a clean slate.
Yeah, so basically they're seeking to bring on barbarism without any idea of what goes beyond it.
And this is how they infiltrate. Members routinely use various social media and gaming platforms, particularly those with young and marginalized user bases, to lure, groom, extort youth to commit violent and sexual acts, including self-harm. It's a vicious organization that wants to destroy society by destroying and corrupting the individual. And the best ones to do that with, the ones that are most vulnerable to this, would be the young, and that's why they target them.
Yeah. All right. I think we can kind of leave it at that.
Yeah. So they talk about a 14-year-old that was youth who was allegedly involved in online extremist groups. So it's a terrible outfit, basically.
Yeah.
And you wonder what motivates people to even think along those lines. What kind of bitterness do they have against the society they live in, that they want it destroyed? They want to corrupt the youth so much that the society cannot continue.
Okay, so Rick asked the question: if they appointed the new chair for Niagara region. I haven't heard such a thing, and we would have probably reported on it by now. I don't. Have we missed it? I don't think so.
I don't think so. I've been looking for it too, and I think the province was going to appoint somebody temporarily, at least. Anyway, there was, of course, the grumblings that the councillors themselves should be the ones to appoint. I
still think they should. And when they appointed Bradley, they did so in one meeting, and they did it fairly quickly.
Yeah, well, he was a long experienced politician.
He was a very experienced politician.
Yeah, fairly well respected.
And very well respected locally, and he was prepared to work with people across the political spectrum, right?
Yes.
And one of the things that a friend of mine knows him very well, has known him all his life.
Yeah, so I don't know. Where are you going to find a duplicate
Yeah, you're
for?
not easily, but
Not,
the
not easy.
region needs to come up with that.
Yeah, and that's the main thing here is I don't know what the delay is. I'm sure that there's good reasons for it, but anyway, right now the councilors that's out of their mind at the current time because they have this super challenging regional budget to come up with where they can't see it under 10%, but they're going to have to defer some infrastructure costs. They're going to have to kick them down the road, so to speak, so they can keep the price of the increases down to about 7% rather than 10%.
Yeah. Right.
Roughly speaking.
Yep, and we're going to have to leave it at that point.
Yes, indeed, and I pointed that out because that kick the thing down the road has got us into trouble before.
Absolutely.
And so, and I will bring up Gaza. I do it every day. Gaza, and I'll include Ukraine too. They are ineffective. Trump's come up with some pretty ineffective peace deals, although everybody says how wonderful they are. They have to go that way. Otherwise, he'll rant and rave and threaten you. So I don't know what's going to happen. They have the yellow line right now in Gaza, which makes me very, very unsure. That yellow line is supposed to be splits Gaza in half. The Palestinians are supposed to be controlling one part of it, and Israel the other. I just see this as an opportunity for Israel to take over that piece of land and start settling it and squeezing the Palestinians even into a smaller zone. And that is really the real purpose of that. Is to make
I see that as a big problem as well in that way.
And I don't really see anybody in the States doing anything about it, especially when you get guys like Allison with the ear of the president, and he's an avowed Zionist and buddies with Netanyahu, and he hands Trump all kinds of money for his campaigns, and they're dealing with his whole family and all that. It just does not look good.
No, not in the least. Okay.
All right.
And I think we can call. And Dave?
Without further ado, I bid you adieu.
Thank you. Bye.